ABC News correspondent at the White House. Good morning, Karen Travers.
Good morning. Busy Monday.
Lots of confusion. You've been working overtime on this. First, the administration says this is not a Muslim ban, and yet it keeps getting reported that Christians are going to get preferential treatment. So what's accurate there?
Both of those things. The White House says this is not a Muslim ban. The president himself in a statement said this is not about religion, but then part of this is that Christian minorities from these countries would get preferential treatment. So it's hard to see how those two things square. But, a lot of this weekend has been reporters asking questions about apples and what seems to be the administration responding with answers about oranges. And it's been a lot of back and forth trying to cut through some of the clearly political rhetoric from the White House, but also getting at what is actually happening on the ground.
There have been a couple of court orders that have, and this is the question, reversed what the executive order was. Explain that to us.
Well, so there were federal lawsuits filed in 4 different states, and these were only related to people who had made it to the U.S. but were detained at airports. And in all 4 cases, federal district court judges issued emergency stays. So they kind of put on hold, a pause, that people could not be sent back to their countries. This does not mean that the order can't go forward. This really just applied to those who were impacted in that first 24 to 36-hour time period. The White House says that the executive order is still in place. It's still going forward. It's still being enforced despite some of these decisions. But in terms of the legal process, this is not the end of it. There are going to be cases filed, and this will work its way through the system because some say the executive order in general is an overreach by the president. It's not in his constitutional authority to do this. It needed to go through Congress. So it's certainly going to be something that will be challenged. And remember, we saw this a lot in the Obama administration with some of his executive orders related to immigration. They were winding their way through the court system for some time.
I know it's fast and furious, and but I'm going to ask you a question, and let us know if you've heard anything. Is there any court order that the administration is not adhering to at this point?
I don't know that.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's impossible.
These are the days I wish I was a lawyer.
But, I mean,
or at least remember my con law classes from my government degree.
The news is coming so fast, so furious, we don't know. Is there anybody still being held at these airports or detained, not allowed to come in and not allowed to go back?
Department of Homeland Security says that nobody is being detained at airports across the United States right now. Now, the question, of course, is whether or not where lawyers are saying, but that is what the official government statement is that nobody is being held. As of this morning, about an hour ago. Why
do we know why the administration picked these 7 countries where terrorists have come from a whole host of other countries, including Saudi Arabia, where most of them have come from?
Right, and that's the big question when I was saying about like the apples and the oranges of the administration response is, well, these are countries that the Obama administration had targeted as terror risks. So we're keying off of that and picking these 7 places. But in terms of why it wasn't bigger, why countries like Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, the UAE, why are they not included on it? The White House response to that has been, well, maybe it will get bigger. But right now, these are the 7 countries because this is where we've determined the greatest risks. But, the questions about why come with answers then of, well, look at terror attacks here in the U.S. of Boston, Orlando, San Bernardino, where there had been homegrown radicals who carried out terror attacks. But of course, none of those attacks would have been stopped by this executive order because it doesn't apply to any of the countries where those people, their families had come from.
There's also a lot of confusion on green cards with people who have green cards. Where does that all stand?
Yeah, so the Department of Homeland Security says that citizens of these 7 countries who hold permanent U.S. residency green cards are not barred from re-entering the United States. Now, that's different than what officials had originally said. So there was a lot of confusion on that. And I think that's where you get to the nuts and bolts of this. Something that was not a surprise. Donald Trump campaigned on this. This was expected, but the rollout of it, there wasn't, the memo of bullet points that was passed down through agencies and coordinated among all of the critical figures, so that the person who's literally just stamping a passport or, greeting somebody at their first encounter in that customs line, they weren't quite sure how this was all working. And they're not lawyers either. So it was a very confusing situation at U.S. airports.
And so the administration agrees that people who have green cards aren't affected by this?
That's what they're saying right now. The statement from Department of Homeland Security. Citizens who hold those U.S. residency green cards are not barred from coming back. So they can leave, and they would not be stopped at the airport.
Karen Travers, one more question, and thank you for filling us in for all this. I know it's a very busy weekend and a very busy morning. Democrats are clearly up in arms over this. But what's interesting is the Republicans that have come out and criticized the administration. What have you heard the criticism from his own party?
Yeah, we have at least 13 Republicans who've publicly criticized the order. Of course, the most high profile would be Senator John McCain and Lindsey Graham. They issued a joint statement saying that this is a self-inflicted wound in the fight against terrorism that ultimately could do more to help terrorist recruitment than improve American security. But another notable is Senator Bob Corker. He says that the administration should immediately make revisions and do a thorough review and implementation of security enhancements. Why is he important? Because he was a Trump supporter. He was even considered to be the Secretary of State in a Trump administration. He is also the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So when you have somebody as high profile as that coming out saying that they botched this, that's a problem. And, sometimes Congress just likes to be involved in things, that you got to have that person who just always wants to be in the loop on everything. In some ways, going through Congress makes things easier because at least you can get them on board and blunt or stave off some of the criticism down the road. But on this, they didn't do it that way.
Karen Travers, ABC News correspondent live at the White House. Karen, great job. Thanks for checking in.
Have a great day.
7:28. Big